Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. If you've built a successful business, you know the truth. Your expertise is high value, but your time is finite. The question is, how do you sustain that success without sacrificing your most valuable asset? We believe that the next level of success requires a strategic pivot, a fundamental shift that moves beyond the old ways. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, automate tasks, and free up your time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Laurie Brewer, a serial entrepreneur, strategic consultant, and co-founder of S.W.A.G, a cutting-edge, AI-driven live auction platform. Laurie's journey is a profound study in market adaptation, spending years in corporate strategy and operations before she realized she didn't know what she thought she knew, leading her to a pivot into startup consulting and eventually co-founding S.W.A.G. With a deep understanding of generational diversity in tech adoption and commitment to innovation, Laurie's insights into scaling businesses, leveraging AI as a strategic partner, and the future of e-commerce are a blueprint for productizing your expertise and achieving rapid growth. Laurie, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Hi, David. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Excited to have you on the show today. Laurie, your career spans years in corporate strategy and operations before you moved into startup consulting and eventually co-founded S.W.A.G. Now, you noted that your background in strategy, operations, and tech adoption has given you a unique perspective on generational shifts in AI utilization. Can you give us a little bit more of your background in that journey and how it led to this position?
Well, certainly I started my career in an AI non-existent space. Coming into the startup world, even just a few years ago, AI was just this conceptual ideation out there. Nobody was thinking about how we were going to use it, how we were going to adopt to it, what it was really going to do, and I don't think anybody knew. And then OpenAI hits the scene and ChatGPT, and everybody's like, oh, let's all jump in. I think, which is great, because we all became very comfortable with that, but I don't think anybody really understood the evolution and how quick that evolution would be. I had a lot of clients who didn't want anything to do with AI. Fear of how employees would handle it, if they would be afraid for losing their positions, and AI is going to take over the world and everybody's job. And then I had some of my younger clients coming into the startup ecosystem right while in college or right out of college, and they were so excited and so overwhelmed, and they loved the innovation, and they wanted AI to be part of what they were doing. It's been interesting to find a bit of a blend now, because those same clients that said no AI are now like, we don't know what to do, help us. And that's great, because we cannot grow and we won't scale without AI. It's not something that can be avoided. So I think just finding ways to incrementally introduce AI into some environments that are a little bit less excited has been a really great way to kind of bring that to the forefront in all of the different relationships that I'm supporting now.
Yeah, I know. Laurie, you mentioned something interesting, very relevant, and it's that hesitation to adopt new technology, right? AI is the latest one. With your experience in operations and strategy both, what do you think it is that generally leads to this hesitation or fear when people are looking at a revolutionary technology that can directly and profoundly impact their operations and their strategy, and they can see that it will? What leads to the hesitation, do you think?
Fear of change, always fear of change, fear of the unknown. It's very easy to adopt something inside your comfort zone. AI is not in a lot of individuals' comfort zone. So when you're asking people to stretch outside of what feels normal, what feels consistent, what feels comfortable, that's when you really start to struggle. And so I think the big fear of change, and then it became FOMO, right? Then it was fear of missing out. It was, oh my God, what if we don't do it? What if we don't do it? And now, then it was this urgency, and I'm like, okay, let's all calm down.
It seems like a bit of a contradiction, right? Because businesses inherently businesses want to grow. Nobody wants to stay the same as they are. And by definition, you can't grow if you're staying the same, if you're inside your comfort zone. So you need to be able to push yourself outside of your comfort zone to grow and to get to a point where you're learning things that you didn't know before, but it's putting you in a different position.
Right. And that is what I'm really starting to see. So one of the things that I'll typically recommend with those that have a hesitancy is let's do kind of a tempered integration. So let's pick one area, find a way that AI can automate, elevate, enhance. Let's start there. And then we'll start to make these incremental shifts that allow them to, one, feel comfortable, two, see results, and three, feel like they're now knowledgeable. And that has really helped with some of the clients that I've worked with that have been a lot more apprehensive in the AI space.
Now, Laurie, I believe that one of the biggest and most prominent traits of leaders who are true leaders is the ability to recognize that they don't know what they don't know, right? To be able to perhaps seek outside help, outside experts, or to be able to even delegate tasks to people they have in their company who are experts in what they do, right? But as leaders, as business owners, I think we all come to a point where we feel like we know everything we need to, but often that leads to a revelation of understanding. When you try and grow further, you get into a position where there are things you don't know, right? Especially with AI, you need to get into that zone of discomfort as we were speaking about. But I believe that you went through a little bit of a journey here yourself of getting to a point where you were ready to move forwards. You realized that, hey, you know what, there's still so much more out there. I need to go back to ground zero in a manner of speaking and perhaps relearn some new perspectives to really push myself forwards. Am I getting that right?
You are. Actually, that's clear. So whether we like it or not, if you come from a corporate space, you have learned bad habits. You learn to say yes to things you probably shouldn't say yes to. And that a lot of that is fear driven or lack of solid leadership. And so I had started to, one, overwhelm myself. And you get into this space where you're like, all these new things are coming at you and you're like, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use this. And so then I had this tool set of chaos, right? It wasn't helping me. It was preventing me from growth. And so sometimes you have to kind of sit back and look at the systems and the process and the tools that you've put into place and really start to understand what is helping me here, what is actually driving the needle forward, and what is actually creating blockers for me that I didn't even realize. And so that's when you really start to look at that pivot. And also, I was doing a lot of things on my own because there were tools that would allow me to do it. And I realized there are certain instances where it's just better to pay somebody else to do those things with a tool that they've created or with a system or a process that they've created. And I think you get in this mindset too coming out of corporate where you're not spending, right? There's so much expense control, so much budget management, so much of this. And you're always at limited resources and do less, do more with less. And so I really sat down and looked at what I was doing, how I was doing it, the tools. And when I realized that I was overspending probably 50% more than I needed to for tools that were literally adding no value to my business, to my process, to my clients. And so I kind of did a level set for myself. And then that's when I really started to shift around how I use AI, how I use technology, and how that empowers and elevates my business.
Incredible. It seems like within corporate especially, people surround themselves by tools, by systems, maybe by people sometimes as well. You came to that moment of realization yourself outside of the corporate environment where you were able to step back and actually analyze what was happening. What led to your ability, or what do you think gave you that ability to really separate yourself from the business and from everything that was surrounding you so you'd have this different perspective?
I always think about it. So I have this, I always say, you fail fast, you recover faster, right? I felt like I was failing, right? I wasn't growing or scaling. I wasn't meeting the goals financially or a client that I had set out for myself. And so that's when I got to this place where I'm like, wait a minute, you're failing, so let's figure out why. Let's do that fast, and let's figure this out and recover. So, failure never breaks you unless you allow it to. But I'm big into proactively identifying that and looking at myself and saying, what are you doing that's not working for you or for your clients? And so that was really when I started to pivot and design better, not just my process, not just my sales strategy, but the tools that were really allowing me to focus on strategy, vision, and objectives versus focusing on that tactical, operational, day-to-day grind that, hustle is not success. And so I was hustling, but I wasn't successful at the level I expected to be. And that's when I was like, okay, now it's time. We got to fix this.
In a way, it kind of takes us back to that fear of getting outside of the comfort zone, right? Fear of failure. You have to be willing to fail fast, recover fast, and learn fast, especially in the startup world. Now, Laurie, you've co-founded S.W.A.G, right? You're in another startup environment from the ground up. You're needing to fail fast and learn fast. Tell us a little bit more about S.W.A.G. It's an AI-driven live auction platform. What differentiates you from anyone else out there?
I think what differentiates us is Swaggy, which is our AI concierge that supports both the sellers, so the folks that are hosting and driving the live auctions, and those that are attending and buying. It is a full service AI concierge is the best word I can use for it, because it does things for you that you don't need to do them. It will help you to build out your auction structures. Will help you to onboard, right? It's an onboarding tool. So Swaggy walks you through the onboarding process from the time you log into Swag, which is stuff we all get. That's the acronym. It is your best friend on that platform, and it becomes your partner in your business if you are selling, whether it's a marketplace or live auction, and it becomes your partner in buying. So David, let's say you're looking for something. Like, I'm obsessed with shoes, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm obsessed with shoes. I'm looking for a specific type of shoe in a specific size. I tell Swaggy what I want. He goes, he scours. And when he finds it, he will come back to me and be like, this auction is coming up. These are the shoes you're looking for. What is your max bid? What is your cap? He'll go in and bid for you. He will bid for you up to that max to try and win that auction for you. So that is what will differentiate us in the market. It's amazing concept. I'm very fortunate. I work with 3 other co-founders, all of which have come from the startup ecosystem. I met them in the startup ecosystem. I have tremendous respect for them, and we all have just the same passion and drive for bringing swag to life, and especially Swaggy. That's a real win for us.
Oh, I could see the value in that. And if the audience can't, I mean, you got to sit down and listen to that again, right? I mean, if you're into live auctions, eBay is the biggest platform. I think that all people would recognize. But if you've ever tried to bid on something, it comes down to the hour, to the minute, to the second. So to have an AI assistant to be able to not just find the products that perfectly fit what it is you're trying to buy or seek out, but also to be able to bid without emotion and to bid at the right times. I mean, this sounds very profound. What's like is what comes to mind for me. But when we look at the actual size of your total addressable market, I mean, who else is out there other than eBay? How big is the opportunity for Swag?
I think the opportunity is huge for us, especially as we get into 2026, 2027. The live market or live auction marketplace, the growth of that is like 78% by 2030. Competitors for us would be Whatnot, eBay, certainly TikTok Live is another competitor for us. We're in good company, most certainly, and I believe that Whatnot is currently valued at $11 billion, and that is all they do is live auctions. So I think the market is positioned for us. I think Swaggy will take us outside of anything that anyone else has ever seen, and I think that's going to be the catalyst to bring us into the forefront. So yeah, I think we have a huge opportunity to be a big player in that space.
And are you going to be focusing on the consumer side of things and serving and marketing towards them, or are you going to be trying to work with some of these larger platforms and bring swag and swaggy to them so they can serve their customers better?
I think initially it'll be consumer driven, but then I believe we will scale. And that is part of the scale strategy, and that would be at those bigger level platforms. I mean, at some point, for all we know, we'll be bought up by one of the much bigger platforms, and that's the dream, right? So.
Well, an exit is always the goal with the startup. Well, it often is anyway. Unless you're like Mark Zuckerberg or something, and I don't know, you're crazy, whatever it is.
Exactly.
So we're talking about scale, right? The market for startups in 2026 is crazy. There's so many different AI-driven platforms that allow people to create technology or just AI itself. People are inspired by, and they have so many great ideas that they can come and serve people with. When we're looking at, going to market in 2026 with all the forces that are out there, scaling is going to be quite the challenge. Regardless of how good your product is, if you don't get it to the right people in the right time, you could either become obsolete, so another player could come into play, or you could just unfortunately fall flat. So Laurie, with Swaggy and S.W.A.G and the value that it can bring to the market, what are some of the biggest challenges that you think you guys are up against right now going to market and really getting it out there on the scale that you need to?
So one of the things about us is that we're fully bootstrapped at this point, right? So everything we're doing is bootstrapped. And so we're at traction, building traction, getting people onto the platform, running the trials, and then I think funding. Funding is always a challenge. I think we have a great story. I think we have a really solid pitch. And I don't believe that getting funding is going to be a challenge for us. We've held off because we're in the process of the final developer, Swaggy. And that's really where the traction launches for us. I think all of the startup clients that I have today, especially just this huge influx of AI-driven startups, the competitiveness it's tighter than anything I've ever seen. And differentiating their story is really what is critical. If they don't have a differentiator, they'll never get funding. They're not going to be successful. So figuring out what that is in their product and what their product roadmap looks like, and then how do they effectively represent that to potential investors is really, really where I've been spending a lot of time, to be honest with you, with the clients that I have. I think the startup world was competitive 8 years ago. But now I am just literally amazed at just the volume of new startups that hit the market every single day. What I really love is I just know I'm starting to see this shift. I am seeing a ton of startups from high school students, early college students. And I love that there is this newfound motivation and drive towards entrepreneurship. Because this is going to sound terrible. Any of my corporate friends are going to hate me for saying this. But I'm saying it. Anybody that can avoid corporate should avoid corporate.
Couldn't agree more.
It's no fun. And it is just, you are making someone else wealthy when you could be placing all that energy into really creating the life that you want and you truly deserve. So I love that I'm starting to see that more.
I think the one valuable thing about corporate is that it's a learning environment. It's almost like going to school. Again, you need business acumen. You need to learn certain skills and communication and all of these things. You can learn them on your own. It might be more challenging, but if you're going to avoid corporate, don't avoid learning those lessons. You still need to become a student of communication, of structural organization, of all of these things, because a great idea isn't necessarily going to bring you success, but it's the execution of it.
So the alternative to that is I had to unlearn everything I learned in corporate to be in startup. So I think that there's foundational business, finance, those are elements, just understanding the logistical aspects of entrepreneurship and what that means incorporating. But if you have the right attorneys, you have the right accountants, you have the right strategists, consultants, you will learn a space that aligns with your product, with your business, with your direction. And I think I spent a couple of years unlearning everything I learned in corporate because it is very limiting. It's a mindset that entrepreneurs don't have when you get locked in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to back up here a little bit to something we were talking about a moment ago, because I think it's really important to look at just in terms of the general state of the market for startups, right? 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the differentiator was IP, it was intelligence, it was coding, it was having the people to be able to build out a product. But things have changed drastically with AI, right? You can you can have a little bit of an understanding of coding or at least be competent, and you can enhance your ability to build products. So something that I think is really important to highlight that you said, Laurie, is that it's the relationships and it's the story of the brand that's going to sell today more than anything, right? Technology is too easy to come by. Most people can even build an app using something like Lovable, right? So it's not the technology that'll be the differentiator, but it's going to be the story you're able to tell people and how it is you're going to be able to draw them in with human emotion. So yes, AI is great and AI can take you far, but never forget what's really fundamental to the business. It's the people and how you make them feel what you're actually delivering to them at the end of the day.
I agree with that. And, I have seen startup companies that have great products and they have a great pitch, but their team cohesion in front of investors, awful. It's that the team is what is going to drive the product to the market. So if the team is not cohesive in front of a group of investors, how cohesive are they when they get into a room and they've actually got to hustle to get this product built, get it to market, right? And so I think team dynamics are very interesting. It's something I always look at before I even take on a new client. I ask to meet with the entire founding team. So if there's more than 2 founders, I want to meet with everyone, and I want to meet with anybody who is actively participating in the product development and the evolution of the company, because I need to see what the cohesion of that team looks like. If they're not cohesive, I know they're going to struggle to be successful.
And I mean, like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? So if you're not going to be working with a team who you know is cohesive and are ready to actually action and implement the strategies and the advice you bring them, then, I mean, are you really just wasting your time at the end of the day?
Exactly.
Yeah. So Laurie, if we shift gears here a little bit, you have extensive experience in the startup world, in corporate, as well as a consultant, right? AI is the topic of discussion. We've determined that a lot of people have hesitation and fear around it. Some other people are moving forwards full steam ahead. When we look at businesses, from your experience as a consultant, when we look at businesses outside of the AI realm, right? Service-based businesses or brick and mortar stores, whatever it is, who want to use AI, who don't want to be hesitant, who want to jump in. Again, with your experience as a consultant, where do you recommend people generally start when it comes to technology like this?
So usually in 3 to 4 specific places. The first is operations and process, right? Just leveraging it to draft the SOPs, summarizing your meetings, just even first draft creations, things like that. I think ops and process is a great place. It's usually where I start because you can start to see the value pretty quickly, especially as you automate. Talent, hiring. For scaling companies, I think it's a great space. I just met with a company, Star Hire, that's getting ready to bring their product to market, video-based interviewing. What an amazing concept. Like, the amount of value associated with that, hugely significant. To me, it just structures things differently. It allows you to better manage. It takes time back that we all need. Marketing and content. Here's what I tell folks. Use it for marketing and content. There are great tools out there, and also some automation tools that'll automate, just even automating your social media posting, scheduling, that is a huge time saver. Even building content, right? Understanding SEO strategy and optimization. So I always say, those are the 3 core areas. We'll start with one, build from there, then we'll move to the others. We usually start with wherever I identify they have the biggest limitations. That's where I'll start. I also think even from a leadership perspective. So you and I were laughing about this when we talked the first time, but there are sometimes when I'm using AI as I'm asking questions. I'm like, here's my strategy. Does this make sense? Does this make sense in the industry? Do a little bit of research, give me some feedback on that. So I think even leaders can leverage this tool, right? To start to ideate, to validate some of that ideation, frame out strategies. So I think there's a lot of different ways that leadership can use it as well. And that's usually where I will start.
No, definitely sound advice and a good starting point. I think a lot of people understand the opportunity that could come with AI. Maybe they're just a little bit uncomfortable because of the perceived risks. Perceived risks. There are risks, but often we make our concerns bigger than they should actually be. From your perspective, what are the biggest risks then for leaders in the startup ecosystem who are hesitant or uncomfortable with AI? What are the real risks, not the ones that, can't be overcome with a little bit of learning and a little bit of time?
They'll struggle to grow and scale. To be honest, it's competitive positioning. At this point, it's not optional. So one of the things I will typically say is, you automate the repeatable, right? That removes a lot of that tactical, burdensome workload, but then you humanize the meaningful. So if you are automating those items that are repeatable and tactical in nature, you are allowing the humans to fully capacitize intellect, right? They're focused on growth, scale, vision, objective, like they're building strategy. And so I think if you give up on AI and say, oh, we're not going to use it, you're going to fail. It's just, you just can't be competitive in this market. Any market.
The true downside is failure. Failure and becoming obsolete for lack of wanting to adopt and grow. Right? There's always risks, there's always challenges in business, but we're on a constant journey of learning and overcoming, failing fast and learning fast, as you said earlier. Laurie, your story covers corporate strategy, entrepreneurial adaptation, and the necessity of embracing AI. For the listeners out there who are in the middle of their own growth shift, what's the single most important piece of advice that you would leave them with about positioning themselves for success in the current market?
Don't get in your own way. That's my advice to myself. I always listen, start with a weekly cadence, right? Just be clear and crisp. A simple scorecard. Don't be overwhelming. You don't have to measure every data point known. Like, figure out what really matters, what moves the needle. Just be very clear on who owns what in your business. If you're a solopreneur and you own it all, figure out what tools own those, what I consider to be repeatable things, and you humanize the meaningful work through yourself. I think when we set those priorities weekly and we're measuring what matters and we're really making people accountable, that's where traction begins. And once you have traction, scale just almost goes on autopilot.
Laurie, thank you so much for joining us on the Growth Shift today and sharing your insights and your advice with the audience. For anyone out there who might like to learn more about SWAG or perhaps to just continue the conversation with you, what would be the best way to find you?
The best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn, and I always respond to my messages. Or you can find me through my website, which is glowupconsult.com.
Excellent. Laurie, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Another powerful conversation on the Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on the Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.